Hi there, I'm Paul Golden, presenting some ideas that may be useful for nurses and midwives on compassionate psychology. I've studied Dr Gabor Mate's work, Compassionate Enquiry, and just put some slides together. Let's see if they might be of some use. So consider what you already know about psychology and what you might like to know more about. I think in our daily work, we're counselling each other and we're counselling the people we care for, often not realizing what skills we already have. So the following exercises help us to explore quite deeply if there's any triggers. So I invite you to check in with your body, check in with your head, your chest, with your belly, especially with the gut. Maybe check in with your legs, your arms, taking time to listen to the body. Check in with your neck and throat. So take some time to explore the body with the breath and see, what do you feel? Where do you feel this? If your body could speak, what would it say? In particular, if there's a specific place, say there's a tightness in my heart, what would that say if it could speak? Or a tightness in the throat, perhaps, or somewhere else. Just go into it, take a breath or two or three, as long as you like, and ask, if my body could speak, what would it say? And if it says, I'm upset that something happened, is that a perception or is it a feeling? Being upset is a feeling, but then narrow it down. Is it anger? Is it worry? Is it sadness? Is it grief? What is it? Is this the first time that you felt like this? So just consider, did I feel like this maybe last week, last year, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? When was the first time that you felt this? So you may remember back to childhood, and you can go even further and further, asking yourself, when was the first time I felt this? So be aware that a lot of our feelings, probably most, if not all, did not start with us. They're feelings in the universe. Our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents had the same feelings. So they will have had feelings of separation, grief, trauma, because every person has to experience separation from birth and onwards. A separation of the cord, separation from the mother, perhaps from breastfeeding, or when the mother goes to work. So there's always a sense of separation. And how do we feel that? What does it trigger for us? Where do we hold it in the body? So do we have a tight constriction in our throat or our heart or our gut? And is that affecting us in our work, in our life, in our health? So the suggestion that there's transgenerational trauma, grief, trauma, separation, it didn't start with you. It's always come from somewhere before us. So it didn't start with our parents or our grandparents. So if we had an event that happened in our childhood that triggered how we felt some negative separation or pain or whatever, who did you speak to about this when you were a child? And if not your parents, why not? And who would you want your children or another child to speak to? So very often a child, or an adult rather, will say when they were a child, they didn't tell their parents. Why not? Perhaps they had issues about trust or shame or guilt or some other issues, so they didn't share what they needed to share and what we would wish our children or nieces and nephews or neighbours or any child, we would wish them to share and tell us. We'd wish them to feel safe to tell us. So why don't some of us share these things? Again, if it's guilt and shame and other negative judgments, so very often it is self-judgment instead of self-compassion. So imagine another child having your experiences. They're feeling what you felt. And if you can't or don't get in touch with your own feelings and you imagine another child having these feelings, sometimes that can be easier to access the feeling of the pain that we often try to push away. So by experiencing the pain, we move through it. By resisting the pain, we carry it with us for life. So experiencing whatever childhood separation, pain, trauma, some particular event, consider how another child, how would they feel? And as I said, who would you want them to tell? This is a very quick suggestion about connecting to your body and your breath and any previous triggers, being aware if they're in the present. If somebody's driving annoyed me today, what's the response? Where do I feel it in my body? And is it the first time I felt anger and a constriction in my gut? No, maybe when I was 10 or 5, or when my parents acted in a particular way, even earlier, even in the utero. There could have been some event that I perceived as trauma, as separation, as pain. So just simply now checking, am I in balance? Taking a breath, checking with the body. And as we check if we are in balance, and if we may be out of balance, we need to eat or drink or rest, or we're just aware that we're out of balance, we can't always fix it. But that awareness helps us. It gives us choices and responsibilities, and we probably can engender others to check that they're in balance. Just as I'm doing with you, you will be doing with your clients, with your family, with your colleagues. So by observing a trigger that I'm judging people for their eating habits, or they're drinking a lot of alcohol, they're smoking, so I've got that judgment, I become aware of it, I possibly judge less and become more compassionate to them. But really, I'm becoming more compassionate to myself. So being compassionate about our judgments is easier when we're curious. Why am I judging somebody for drinking a lot of alcohol or smoking? What is it about me that is triggered? So whenever somebody's annoying or upsetting, it's always something in us that's triggered. So just being curious. Often we talk of holding the space, particularly as caregivers, yet we can go further, we can be the space. And that just means checking we're in balance. I find personally that psychology has a lot in common with mediation. That's a word that gets mixed up with meditation, which is okay. Body work like cranial sacral, shiatsu, you have to be very present with a person you hold. You don't keep doing something, you just be present. And to be truly present with them, we have to be present with ourselves in balance. So for me, it's really interesting to have psychology, mediation, cranial sacral, and similar things. Even painting, doing artwork, is being present with ourselves. How do we do this? Practice. Practice the mindfulness, being here and now, being in this breath right now. And it's okay not to be in balance. It's okay not to be okay. Just checking in. So briefly going to show some of the subjects we can always consider when we're holding the space and being the space. What's going on around us? Who's around us? Why is this happening or that happening? So we could, in a longer presentation, discuss the following themes to see if there's any triggers, and being curious and compassionate about the triggers. For example, there's 18 words that I will share. See what comes up for you. Are there triggers about trauma? About feeling disconnected? Do you have a feeling of constriction anywhere? So you could just pause on this slide for as long as you like and explore these 3 words and feel any triggers that come up and ask yourself, what do you feel? Where do you feel it? If the body could speak, what would it say? And is this the first time you felt it? And if not, go back into your childhood to see when you felt it. And when you had an event, did you share that with perhaps your parents or someone else? Or did you keep it locked inside? Just be curious about the triggers. Then the same with this slide, with attachment, with adaptation, and with addiction. For me, studying psychology, addiction means what is the pain, not what is the addiction, or why the addiction is really why the pain. Something happened to somebody that's painful, and we develop a coping mechanism that serves us well at some point, and it doesn't serve us well to continue it. So being curious and aware and compassionate about our addictions allows us probably to release them or to reduce them, or at the very least just to be aware of them, and that could even be enough. Other trigger words to explore about children, our children, other children, being a child. Does family act as a trigger for us? What is the word responsibility? Is it a beautiful word we want more of, or a frightening word we want to run away from? So just looking at the triggers, feeling the triggers in the body now. So if your legs are jumping up and down, you want to run away, that's a feeling in the body. What would the legs tell you if they could speak? It's the words memories, stories, beliefs triggering for you. Just pause as long as you like on each word, on each slide. Forgiveness is sometimes a word we think it's an action that we need to do for others or others need to do for us, or we tell somebody we've forgiven them. Everything's about the self. Self-compassion, self-forgiveness, self-will. Again, explore if these words give you any triggers like relationships. Possibility is a bit like hope. If we are stuck in something, it's possible to become unstuck, to move forward. Even if we don't think it's possible, we need to believe that it is possible. And that comes often from somebody encouraging, supporting, counselling, reflecting, or being the space in our presence, another colleague or friend or care person. So if we explore the words trauma, what happened to you? Everybody's got a story. They've all had some trauma. We have all had some trauma, some perception of trauma. Did we disconnect from ourselves? Was there a constriction again? Some of the books I've enjoyed by Gabor Mate, particularly for carers, when the body says no. If we keep caring for others without caring for ourselves, the body will give way, and the energy, often an autoimmune disease or all sorts of things. So he explains a lot of that in this book. In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts is about addiction and the pain of addiction. He's written a book with Gordon Neufeld, a psychologist. Hold Your Kids Close, I think, like this. And any of the books, but there's lots of free YouTube videos about Dr. Gabor Mate if you found his approach useful. And they have a 1-year course. The next one is starting in May 2021. So I have an audio file going through similar things that I've just done, which I'm happy to share if anybody's interested. I suggest doing the exercises, going through the words in a calm, quiet place, listening to the body, holding your own space as you would hold space for others. I invite any questions. This is the kind of presentation I would do to a group of students. And here's just a few sort of picture art responses. Very much Gabor Mate himself was a doctor with his pager going endlessly, neglecting his family because he was a wounded healer wanting to heal others. So always the carers. Why do we want to care? Who are we caring for? And do we care for ourselves? And could we do more self-care, self-compassion? So I'm wishing everybody great self-compassion. I'd love to hear any questions or feedback. So take care.